I'm making this video not as justification for white people's behavior in colonized country, but just as an insight into what it's like growing up as a white person in a colonized country. So growing up, my parents never spoke about Aboriginals. They basically just didn't exist. They were not in our conscious attention. At school, we were told that we were Australians, that Australia was a definite thing that existed within our sphere of reality, and that there were people and that they were here before us, but no one actually explicitly said this, but the implication was that they didn't make the most of that opportunity. Therefore, it made sense for us to swoop in and take it from them, because it just seemed like they weren't doing much with Australia. I experienced a lot of casual racism that I'm familiar with that now, but at the time I couldn't really put a name to it. But like my dad, who I don't like, when we were arguing as kids and we were making a ruckus, he would say to us, "You're all acting like a bunch of abos." And I'm sorry for using that word, but I don't want to censor it, because I want to say it for what it was, which was racism. And so growing up in Australia, you knew that there were these people around, you knew that they were different from you, you knew that their people existed before, but you just didn't really care about it. That was just life. As I got older, I got more defensive about it. And when people brought up the Aboriginals, I would say the same thing of like, well, they don't want our help, they're drunk, they're lazy, because that's what I was told growing up. And that's what you just learn to believe. And I was even told stories of kids, I was told stories when I was a kid that I know now to be untrue, and more urban legends and ways to hurt the Aboriginals and to justify racism. But I heard stories growing up of I was told a story about a kid who smiled at an Aboriginal and he hit her in the head with a brick. So it's not only racism, but you're taught to fear Aboriginals. I was scared of them. I didn't want to be around them. They were just these people that were around that when you saw them, you got really uncomfortable and you tried to get away from them. And I was very blind to this for years and years and years, until I came to Vancouver. And when I was in Vancouver, I witnessed First Nations people and their struggles. And it occurred to me, I went, wow, these people are genetically different, yet they have the same struggles. What if it's not a flaw with being Indigenous? What if it's colonialism? What if we're doing this to them? And our refusal to acknowledge that is just making it worse and compounding the issue and throwing fuel to the fire. And I'm not going to say I had that epiphany immediately. It was an ongoing thing. But now I'm at a point in my life where I've definitely opened up my eyes to it all, and I get it, and I'm so... I don't want to say hurt, because I'm not the one who was hurt, but I guess I'm just so sorry for what's happened, and I see it everywhere, and I see the ill impacts of what people that look like me have done to these people, and it just really upsets me. And I'm going to call out the ignorance. I'm going to call out the casual racism as often as I can, because it is hurting. It's the refusal to acknowledge the real hurt that we've done that is causing more hurt every single day. So I think that's a decent enough video for the time being. And as I said, this is not justification. All I'm doing is, to any First Nations and Indigenous person that's listening, I just want to give an insight into what it's like growing up as a white person, what it took for me to change my mind, and what I'm trying to do about it now.
We in Africa, we had all the gold, all the diamonds, all the land. White people had all the Bibles. Now we got all the Bibles. White people got all the gold, all the diamonds, all the land.
What if I told you that the Vatican helped Europe colonize the world, that it justified European colonialism in the name of spreading Christianity, that there are papal decrees that allowed European empires to take over entire countries? And for what? To allow colonizers to subjugate people, to take away their lands, wage war on their cultures, impose a self-conceived notion of racial superiority over them. And all of this just because the colonizers claimed that they were the ones who discovered new lands. So they had a right to rule over those new lands. Now, the Vatican has come forward and apologized for what it did. It has apologized for helping the colonizers. Here's a report.
Have you heard something called the doctrine of discovery? It's Europe's version of finders, keepers. It's what European colonizers used to subjugate the world. The doctrine was cited by Europeans who discovered new lands, and the doctrine traces its roots back to the Vatican and to the Catholic Church. Now the Church has apologized for helping colonizers in their conquests. On Thursday, the Vatican issued an unprecedented statement. It officially apologized for its historical role in justifying colonialism by European powers. The Vatican said, "The Roman Catholic Church repudiates those concepts that fail to recognize the inherent human rights of indigenous peoples, including what has become known as the legal and political doctrine of discovery." It also declared that the doctrine is not part of the Christian's faith, but the Vatican is centuries late. The doctrine of discovery is a concept laid out in the so-called papal bulls. What are these? These are usually official statements from the head of the Catholic Church. That would be the Pope. So no less than the popes were involved in justifying European colonialism. Their decrees were used extensively in the conquest of Australia, Canada, New Zealand, Africa, and the United States. The colonizers claimed that they had the approval of the church to have sovereignty, property, and commercial rights in lands they discovered. Here's an example. Papal decrees in the 15th century permitted Portugal to subjugate Muslims and the non-Christians in Africa. That's not even the ugliest part of these decrees. The Vatican was quite explicit when it came to who Europe could colonize. It could only be non-Christians. So colonialism was essentially used as a tool by the Vatican to spread Christianity across the world. And the colonized countries paid a huge price. Take Canada, for instance. Between the 19th and the 20th centuries, more than 150,000 indigenous children were taken hostage in Canada. They were snatched away from their families and lodged against their will in the re-education institutions. Here, they were subjected to unspeakable atrocities. They were physically assaulted and sexually abused. Many of them didn't survive. They were buried in mass graves that are still being discovered in Canada. Last year, Pope Francis visited Canada. He apologized to the indigenous people for what the Vatican put them through. In 2015, too, the Pope apologized for the Catholic Church's action in Bolivia. He sought forgiveness not only for the offenses of the Church, but also for the crimes committed against the native people during the so-called conquest of America. Just so you know, European colonism was a vast and often very violent project. The whole world at some point or the other has been under the control of a European power. Look at the French Empire. It ruled over territory greater than the size of the Europe itself. Then there was the British Empire, the most notorious of them all. And its peak was about 25% of the world population was a subject of the British Empire. Apologies are welcome and long overdue. But preparations will be the closest they'll come to making amends.
I'm just going off the top of my head for a minute. I'm not sure there's any other way out. I've done the math. I'm not sure there's any other way out of this outside of essentially white people destroying each other. Because, like, this country was built on white violence, specifically by white men. And I feel like that's the same way it has to crumble. And I think, like, as we have seen so many non-white communities take a step back, it has really highlighted and illuminated how fucking weak specifically white men are. Because you hear it all the time, right? If you touch my kid, I'll shoot you. If the government tries to take my guns, I'll exercise my Second Amendment rights. If you come for my neighbor, I'm coming for you. Like, all this shit, it just doesn't happen, dude. Like, the only violence that comes out right now is aimed at everybody that isn't white. And a few white people took the heat too, clearly. But I knew that peace shit was out the window like years ago. Like peace rooted in white supremacy, which is just inaction and comfortability, will do nothing to fucking stop what's happening. And I think the reality is white people that do care right now are scared to go toe to toe with the white supremacist violence that destroys everything else. Because you see all these white people look around and be like, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. And the reality is, like, we have to put some real shit on the line. Yeah, I mean, like, including our bodies and our lives. And what, 96% of white people aren't willing to do that shit? Well, the natural outcome of that is black and brown bodies get stacked up while white people throw a fucking fit over being critiqued over the No Kings protests. The white men that care right now, y'all need to be in the gym or at the range. Me personally, I'm not a fucking pacifist. I never have been. And again, this peace shit, the idea of peace that white people want to hold on to, this idea of basically non-confrontational approaches, literally just doesn't fucking work. So white violence built this country, and the destruction of the white body may make way for something new. I don't know. Just some thoughts. Especially and I'll wrap it up, but especially seeing these white men go after kids at a protest or go after non-white communities all the fucking time. White men should be out there putting other white men's faces into the fucking concrete for doing any of that shit. That's just my opinion, though. But maybe that's because I'm white and that's our nature is violence. Who knows?
Belgium is finally expressing regret for its brutal colonization of the Democratic Republic of Congo. It occupied the DRC for 75 years and killed at least 10 million Congolese people during its rule. Belgium stripped Congo of valuable resources like diamonds and timber. Belgium got rich by forcing Congolese people into slavery on rubber plantations. DRC became independent in 1960.
Dans notre excès de l'oppression colonialiste, nous vous le disons, tout cela est désormais fini.
Belgium's King Philippe is now on a week-long visit to DR Congo. He's returned a stolen Congolese mask on indefinite loan to the National Museum. It's one of 84,000 artifacts looted by Belgium that they've agreed to return. But many Congolese say the scale of the violence their people suffered by Belgium requires more meaningful reparations. In 2020, Belgium took down statues of King Leopold II, who ruled Congo as a personal fiefdom. Belgium's parliament also established a commission in 2020 to examine the history of its colonial period.
You know what people don't talk about enough? How colonization wasn't just about stealing land. It was about hijacking the mind. They didn't just conquer people, they rewired them. That's the real psychological warfare. Convincing the oppressed that their suffering was order, that obedience was holy, and that freedom was chaos. They used everything, religion, education, even language, to reprogram people's sense of self. They told colonized nations that their gods were devils, their languages were primitive, and their traditions were backwards. And once you believe that, they don't have to chain you. You'll just police yourself. They created the civilized versus savage binary so deep in the global psyche that even after independence, people still chase Western approval. That's the genius of colonial psychology. It doesn't end when the flag comes down. It ends when the mirror changes. Religion was the most effective form of control, though, right? They didn't just introduce Christianity, they redefined it. They replaced the liberating parts with obedience and called submission divine order. They turned the same book that said, "Let my people go," into a handbook for staying in line. They said, "Blessed are the meek," all while enslaving the meek. They said obey your masters, all while being the masters. That's not faith. That's psychological warfare dressed up as morality. And then came the schools, where they taught colonized children that Europe discovered everything, invented everything, and is everything. They erased native history, rewrote resistance as rebellion, and called genocide progress. They didn't have to burn every village. They just had to teach the children to see themselves as less. And when those same children grew up and started leading, they were already half colonized in the mind. That's how you keep control. You don't need armies when you've already conquered identity. Now they call it globalization. They call it humanitarian aid. They call it free market. But it's the same game, it's just different packaging. Debt traps, development loans, sanctions, media. They don't have to occupy you anymore. They just have to convince you that you're free while they hold the receipts. Fenyon warned us about this. Not because he was violent, because he understood the violence of being told your only value is in proximity to whiteness. Colonialism didn't disappear, it just rebranded. They don't need whips when they have Wi-Fi. They don't need chains when they control what you see, what you learn, what you dream of becoming. That's the war nobody sees. The one that makes oppression look like order. Because once the mind believes the master is moral, the body doesn't even try to run. Fucking hell.
Why do you say Europeans never created a civilization?
Show me one. That's the only question I'm saying. Show me a European civilization. Rome was not a civilization. Greece was not a civilization. You don't know a day in the history of Greece where there wasn't a war. You don't know a day in the history of Rome when there wasn't a war. Those are not civilization. Those are death culture, war culture. They're not building anything. They're stealing from other people, borrowing from other people, and still carrying on this anti-human, anti-nature behavior of murdering, stealing to conquer and appropriate something that belonged to someone else that you could have gotten by just shaking their hands and making a deal.
Why are white people so intimidated and threatened by black men, despite their claims that black men are inferior to them and incapable of the most basic tasks?
Well, there's an easy answer to that question. They know black men are superior to them. Put us on any playing field, be it physics or football, and we will win. Give us the same opportunities, and we will win. Because we come from a history of not trying to destroy and dominate the world, and you come from a history of trying to destroy and dominate the world, and that has become the culture of the white community.
Family. I was having a conversation with a white female that I have known since I was 5 years old. And one thing I know about this young lady is that she has done the work. She knows what her ancestors did. She actually has read and studied about the horrors that white people have literally inflicted across the entire planet. So she knows this stuff. So we were talking, and I said to her, I don't feel like white people have had to pay any type of karmic debt for all of the pain and harm and abuse that they have inflicted across the world. And she stopped me. She said, it's totally not true. I said, well, you're going to have to explain that. She said, what it is that white families are not allowed to talk about everything that they experience. She said, black people are really open about their struggles and things that have happened to them, but white people are the exact opposite. She said they're only interested in keeping up a facade, maintaining generational wealth, and making it appear as if they're happy, and they're actually the most miserable human beings on the planet. She told me that behind closed doors, they experience a lot of alcoholism, heavy drug usage, mental health issues, and incest. The incest part is what really got me. So I said, you're going to have to explain that. She said a lot of times in the white households, the dad totally does not like the wife. But they have to keep this image up. They can't split the family up. So in order for him not to leave, then the mother is willing to do anything to keep him happy. And if that means giving up her daughter or even her son to him, then she does it. She said it's so prevalent that they don't even think there's anything wrong with it. It's just a part of like how you grow up. And I was like, what kind of, are you serious? And she was like, yeah. She's like, it's very common. She said, so the thing is that we're over here getting our asses whipped, but nobody talks about it. So the interesting thing is that once she tells me this, then all of these shows, because you know these phones are spies, all of these shows start coming up in Netflix suggested to me. And there are some shows on Netflix that, oh my God, that depict all of this like so vividly. Waterfront is one of them. Animal Kingdom, oh God, that's wild as hell. I think it's called House of Usher, Fall of House of Usher, or something like that. Breaking Bad. But like all of these shows show like these white families who, you know, to the world, they appear to be so put together, but behind closed doors, they are so fucked up, and they will do absolutely anything for survival. And I don't know why I'm surprised. These are a group of people that have literally, as I've said, done any and everything to people across the world to terrorize, to brutalize them. So, you know, it makes perfect sense that they don't care anything about having incestuous relationships with their own children. But I just want to know, do you know any white people that live like this? Or do you have some white people in your life that you can actually have this conversation with? Because I would like to know. And my thing is that, okay, that doesn't make me happy to know that, oh, they're experiencing this behind closed doors. No, I want to see shit front and center. I want to see y'all suffer front and center. And I know that may sound a little harsh, but for all that has been done to melanated people across the world, I feel like we've got to see and experience and witness their downfall for all of the diabolical acts that they have spread across the globe. What y'all think?